Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that an humble address be presented to Her Majesty as follows. Most gracious Sovereign, we, Your Majesty's most dutiful and loyal subjects, the Commons of the United Kingdom and Great Britain and Northern Ireland, in Parliament assembled, beg leave to offer our humble thanks to Your Majesty for the gracious speech which Your Majesty has addressed to both Houses of Parliament. It's a great privilege to move the motion today. I accepted the task because it's an honour to my constituency, a rare chance to address a full chamber, and an historic opportunity to welcome the first peacetime coalition for 80 years. However, I hope I wasn't as overeager of one of our legendary colleagues who languished unnoticed on the back benches for 20 years before receiving an invitation from the BBC to take part in a television debate. And the invitation said there'd be a fee of £25. He wrote back saying he'd be delighted to take part. And he closed a cheque for £25. I confess that when the Chief Whip asked me to do this task, my immediate reaction was to say, but surely it's traditionally shared by a genial old codger on the way out and an oily young man on the way up. When he assured me that this year the criteria are different, I assumed he was referring to the fact that I'm still in mid-career, until he added that instead of an oily young man, we've got a Lib Dem. The honourable member for Bath, who I am sure will do this brilliantly, is certainly not oily. Like all Lib Dems, he abhors hydrocarbons. And like me, he's only young for his age. But I'm sure he's on the way up. This coalition does throw up difficult problems of parliamentary etiquette, which I'm the first to have to tackle. Should I refer to my Liberal Democrat colleague as my honourable friend? But that's a term reserved for members of our own parties. How about my honourable partner? But the word partner nowadays implies an even greater degree of intimacy than friendship, which is clearly what the Daily Mail fears. So I will stick to my honourable ally. My constituency, Hitchin and Harpenden, is unique in many ways, not least in that it was tailor-made to my design. In my maiden speech in 1983, I said with more prescience than I then realised that my only remaining territorial ambition was that a future boundary commission should extend the boundary to the north to include the village of Lilley, from which my Saxon ancestors must have come. And in 1997, they did just that. Given the promised bill to create fewer and more equal-sized seats, new members may want to follow my example and use their maiden speeches to lay claim to neighbouring territory. After annexing the village of Lilley, I agreed to do a TV interview in the local pub, the Lilley Arms. Someone who saw the programme told my mother that her son must be extremely popular, as they've already named a pub after him. However, I don't rely exclusively on my personal charisma to win elections. During one particularly difficult campaign, one of my supporters who lives next door to a funeral parlour plastered his house with my posters, and some wag helpfully scrawled across next to Vote Lilley across the undertaker's window, or die. It did the trick. Another issue in my maiden speech, still a key local priority, was defence of the Greenbelt. So my constituents will be delighted that the gracious speech promises a bill to give local communities control over housing and planning decisions. This gracious speech is the first instalment of the Coalition's programme. I congratulate the Prime Minister on recognising that the inconclusive election result meant that the only way to provide strong and stable government was to form a coalition with the Liberals. Liberal Democrats, I know some of my closest friends. Some of my closest friends find coalition difficult to stomach. But if anyone imagines that, like King David, we could have hidden in the cave of Adullam, refusing to take up the mantle of government until all challenges to our authority disappear, they are mistaken. A coalition of the losers would have been a monstrosity. To govern alone, an impossibility. And a loose agreement falling short of a coalition, an absurdity. It would have left all the other parties free to dissociate themselves from the difficult decisions which we now know are inevitable. I hope my Liberal Democrat allies will not take it amiss if I say of them what John Major, not realizing his microphone was still on, said when he was asked why he kept certain ministers in his cabinet, including, now I come to think of it, me. He said, "I'd rather have the bastards inside the tent relieving themselves outwards rather than outside the tent aiming in." As my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister